How to prepare a workflow and which are the basic settings that you should consider to publish the workflow to run. The general procedure is first you prepare your workflow, then you test it by publishing it on this machine, on your machine, and if everything works fine, then you publish it on the server. In this course, we will focus on the creator and the user or consumer side of Synera Run, so we will not focus on how to set up a run server. That is actually a requirement for this course, and please ask your IT department. They should do it for you. They can also check out the online documentation for further information. How to prepare and adapt an existing workflow for publishing in Run. We use this example for this course. It's the battery pack calculator workflow. You can check it out in the download materials if you like. It might be interesting because you will also learn something about the new Markdown nodes and the reporting. There's a whole reporting section in it. 2D pattern nesting. The dictionary nodes are in there as well, and also parametric CAD design. What it basically does is that you select a cell type, you select a design space, and then you nest the cells in that design space on different planes. All right, so let's get started with the basics. Setting up a workflow for Run is similar as for the custom nodes. So at the very beginning, you need to define the in and outputs. If you have set up your workflow already, you probably have the inputs on the left side and the outputs on the right side. That's also the case here with our battery pack example workflow. Let's quickly check out how you define the in and outputs. Let's focus on the inputs. Here we go to our battery cell type, and if you right-click on it, it is already registered as input. So you right-click on any basic container or slider or whatever, and you assign register as input or as output, but all the sliders and select containers or nodes, they don't have the option to be an output, so only the register as input occurs. Then let's hop to the topic of basic containers, because basic containers can be both in and outputs, and we use them here for the outputs. So let's go to the outputs, and here you can see, right click on it, register as input or as output, and of course with this workflow here, in this case, we use register as output. Very important is also to give reasonable names to them, because if you put a slider, a select node, or any basic container on the canvas, they have their default names. And if you would leave it like this, then the user in Run would only see these default names and, for example, have number, no information, and does not know what to enter. To make it more user-friendly, it is super important to give reasonable names, unique names to all the containers and sliders, or any inputs and outputs that you use. If all the in and outputs are defined, let's make the workflow a bit more descriptive. For this, please use the sidebar, which is on the left of the canvas. For setting up custom nodes and workflows for Synera Run, the first 3 entries are important for us. The first one are the workflow properties. Here you can give a name and a description to your workflow. Also, you will find the nodes to be visualized here. In a few seconds, we will learn more about it. Then we have our inputs, where we have our input definitions, and respectively the outputs for our output definitions. You can also change the order of the inputs. So the order of the inputs does not necessarily be the one that you can see in the workflow from top to bottom. You can simply change the order how it appears later in Synera Run by dragging the inputs and also the outputs up and down to the position you would like to have. You can do that also for multiple in and outputs. Also, you can group things. So let's group some of the inputs together. You can add a name for the group, and this is how it would look like in Synera Run. Here you have a small drop-down, or this small arrow, where you can then see what is inside the group. If you have a lot of in and outputs, this might help to organize your workflow in Synera Run. You have some hidden buttons here that appear only when you hover over it with the mouse. That is like editing, zoom to fit, or you can remove your in and outputs or the groups. Also, we can define which nodes in the workflow are visualized later in Run. You see that in the workflow, these are those purple or pinkish boundaries around the nodes that are about to be visualized. We set it up also in the sidebar here. So you just enter the node that should be visual. And for this node, it doesn't matter if it's also actually visualized in the workflow or not. There's an exception because an output cannot be assigned also as visualized node. So if you want an output also to be visualized in Run, then you need to visualize it directly in the workflow. That's the exception. If you have an FEA workflow, then you usually want to visualize your results. You do this with the model view node. To make this also visually available in Synera Run, all you need to do is to mark it as visualized, as with all the other nodes. But now here, we have certain options. So in the model view node, you usually select your result type and your load step. And now in Synera Run, you can do the same. So from the consumer perspective, you just open your workflow in Synera Run in the browser, and here you have the viewer settings. Some of the parameters are available here as well. So you can just select your load steps. Here's only one, but if you would have multiple, then you can just select the one you want to visualize, and then you visualize the result type. There are certain other options available which are specific for certain model types, for example, or related to any result types.